Okay, now I'm going to show you how to actually fill out the form so that you can write your contract. So let's say we're going to put an offer on this house right here. I'm going to copy this MLS number, just going to steal that and go into just the home page of the MLS. Now you're going to go up to forms, URE Legacy Forms Library, and then you're going to search for the forms that you need. So let's say in this case, we're going to do a Rep C. Remember, we're clicking on the green plus sign, not the link. Let's say we need an FHA addendum because it's an FHA buyer. And then we also need a blank addendum, let's say. So I'm going to do addendum to real estate purchase contract Rep C right here. So I'll just add that here. Now go into create packet. And right here, you'll find auto populate forms. I'll click on that. It'll ask for the MLS number. I'm just going to paste it right there and then hit load. Now that's going to load a lot of the details for this property in for us. There's a few things it won't know. So it doesn't know our buyer's name. So I'm going to fill out our buyer's name right here. Obviously it fills out my information. And who is the seller going to be? The seller is going to be Emily. And then date of offer, that'll always be today because today is the date that we're writing it. So that should be automatic. Now at the bottom, you'll see fill update fields. Just click on that. And then click auto populate forms here. And that will kind of get rid of that little, that auto populate forms section. So now an earnest money deposit in the amount of, we're just going to start going through this. So let's say that we have this property listed at 715. Now it's been listed for 6 days. We don't know exactly what the deal is. Let's say that this is a super hot property and there's a bunch of offers on it. Okay. So let's say it's just a super hot one and we're going to offer, let's say we're going to offer 725. Okay. So go into your Rep C, 725. I'm going to put that here on 2.1, 725. Make sure you use some good punctuation. So use your commas, your decimals, your zeros, all that stuff to make sure it's very clear. Now, typically your earnest money, you're going to want it to be about 1% of the purchase price. That's the average. Sometimes we'll do more, sometimes we'll do less. You're not going to want to do a lot less than 1% or it'll be hard, at least in today's market. So let's say we're going to put $7,500 down as earnest money. And then in the form of, we're going to say check or wire, check/wire. So, and remember, this says we're going to have that deposited at the brokerage. So don't deposit it anywhere else. Make sure it goes to the brokerage if we're doing that. Okay, it says here, it says what items are going to be included. Now, so there's a whole list of them. Read through them. It's a good thing to know. Now you'll see it auto-filled this based on the MLS listing. So the microwave, I just like to clean these up. The microwave, it is included, but you'll notice there's a check mark. We can click right there. So I'm just going to click the check mark and get rid of the microwave. Now, window coverings, those are also included automatically. Right here. So all window coverings, including curtains, draperies, rods, window blinds, and shutters are already included. So I'm just going to delete that out of there. And then smart thermostat, I'm going to leave that. Swing set and smart thermostat, I'm going to leave that there just because, just because it's not specific. Now, I think it's probably automatically included. I mean, it's bolted to the house. It has to do with the heating, air conditioning, fixtures, and equipment. So I think it's included, but we'll just be safe. Now, remember, if you want anything to be included that's not one of these, make sure you click other. So as long as you click other, all of these things listed here will be included. Now, this says there are or are not additional items that are going to be included on a separate bill of sale. In this case, we're not going to, but if you had a lot of things that you wanted to include with it outside of the normal items, you could. But we don't use it super often. Now in excluded items, this just auto-populated from the MLS as well. Realize one of them is C remarks. C remarks is not an exclusion, so we'll get rid of that. The rest of them, it says the seller wants to keep the washer, fridge, freezer, and dryer. So we'll leave them there. Obviously you can change that if your buyer says, no, we want it, then you can just move those up here, get rid of them down there. It just depends. Obviously, if you're trying to be aggressive, you probably want to let them keep the stuff that they want. if you don't really care, if you're, if you feel like you're in a good negotiating position, you could ask for those to be included. Now, the purchase price goes here, and it also goes at the bottom here where it says purchase price there. Now let's fill this out. So let's say earnest money is going to be $7,500. Make sure you use the punctuation. Additional earnest money deposit, we're not going to do any today. Now, sometimes we would use that, but not real often. Only maybe if the client didn't have enough cash for their earnest money right now, they needed some additional time. There's probably a few times that we would use that. I'm going to skip the new loan for a minute. Seller financing, you will know what it is. You'll know what to put there if you're doing seller financing. Right now, it's not very common. If you are doing seller financing, you'll put the amount there, and then you'll also have to attach the seller financing addendum. So go in here. Okay, balance of purchase price in cash at settlement. So what this is saying how much cash are they going to bring to closing in addition to the $7,500 that we already have as earnest money. Now, let's say we're doing a 10% down loan on this. 10% down is going to be $72,500, right? That's going to be 10% of this. So let's say $72,500 is here because that's the down payment. The only thing we need to tweak is this earnest money is also going to go towards the down payment. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract $7,500 from this amount here. So I'm just going to change this to $65,000. And then we're going to say, okay, let's say this was, we got a lot of calculators open here. Let's say that, let me make sure that the sharing is working right. Boom. Yeah, screen. We'll just do screen to make sure it all shows up. Okay, so let's say that we got a calculator here. Hopefully you can see that. So 725, like we said, times 10% is 72.5. So we got that all right. Now, 725 times 90%, which is the other, the rest of it, the amount that's being financed, is going to be 652,500. So I'm going to put that right here, 652,500. And if we did it right, these should all add up to the purchase price, which, I mean, we could check it really quick. So 7,500 plus 652,500 plus 65,000 equals 725. So we did it right. Now, sale of buyer's property either is or is not conditioned on the sale of a home. If they have to sell a home to make this work, then you'd say is. If you don't have to, you'd say is not. Now, 3.3 says, when are you going to take possession of the property? Upon recording means that as soon as it's funded and recorded, the buyer will get keys. Now, if you're doing a extended possession, like sometimes the seller says, hey, I need 60 calendar days after recording to move out, then you can just do it like this. And the reason you do that is because maybe they were only willing to sell their home if they could have some extra time to find a new one. At least in today's market, it's hard to find a new house sometimes, so they need a little extra time. Special assessment. Typically, we just do seller. That just says, hey, if there's any special assessment that requires, the owner to pay for a capital improvement, the seller will pay for it up until closing. Obviously, the buyer will be responsible for it after closing. So almost always I see this as seller. This one in section C, this one is saying if there's a transfer fee, who's going to pay that, the buyer or the seller? Now, in some places, it's not a big issue. If it's a single family home and there's no HOA, it probably doesn't matter too much. Now, if it's in an HOA, if it's a single family condo, townhome, some sort of HOA, then it's going to matter. There's going to be some sort of HOA transfer fee. So you need to find out what that is. One of the most common ones around here is anything in Daybreak will have a 0.5% transfer fee. So if it's a $500,000 purchase, that's going to be a $2,500 transfer fee. So you just have to make sure you know that and then decide, is the seller going to pay for it or is the buyer going to pay for it? Or are they going to split it or whatever? If you're representing the buyer, you typically want the seller to pay for it. But if you're trying to get your offer accepted, you might say, hey, we'll pay that transfer fee and then we will, we'll take care of that so you don't have to worry about it. That's going to make it more likely that your offer gets accepted. So it just depends where you're at in the negotiation. Now, right here, I'm just going to click seller, seller, buyer, buyer. So this says Brandon Thomas of Equity is representing the seller. Nick Gonzalez of KW South Valley is representing the buyer. It should auto-populate all that stuff. Now, due diligence, is it or is it not based on due diligence? So due diligence is obviously your inspections, your meth tests, all of those sorts of things. So do you want to have it based on that or not? Usually we do. Occasionally we will waive that, but obviously that's something you have to talk about with your client. Appraisal condition is or is not based on an appraisal. So is your client willing to make up any gap in the appraisal? You know, if the appraisal comes in at 500 and we're under contract at 520, you know, is your client going to make up that 20,000 in cash, or do we want the opportunity to cancel if the appraisal comes in low? And then the financing condition, if we're getting financing, then we say financing required. If we're not, then you'll say no financing required. Okay, 8.4, earnest money deposit. So this is talking about an additional earnest money deposit. NA is what I would put there. Unless it's a really specific situation and your client maybe is waiting on some cash to be able to put down a sizable earnest money deposit. Okay, addenda. We're going to say there are addenda. I'm going to actually say there are addendum number 1 through 2. Now I'm doing that because remember, we have the contract, we have 2 addenda here. FHA loan addendum and the addendum to the real estate purchase contract. Now, one thing that's going to be tricky, and this is more of a preference, I think it's cleaner to say addendum number 1 through 2 right here, rather than clicking this FHA loan addendum button. I just don't think that's clean. This is very obvious. Okay, addendum 1 and addendum 2. So hang with me on that one, but that's what I would recommend doing. Now, home warranty plan, you can ask for it to be included or not. If you want the seller to buy it, say will. If you want the buyer to pay for it themselves, just click will not. But if you want the seller to pay for it, click will. It's going to be ordered by the buyer. It's going to be through a company selected by the buyer and paid for at settlement by the seller. And then you can put a price. Most of them that I see right now are $600, but that's always changing and it depends on the company that you use. I'm going to scroll down here, 15. Broker Rich says may at the option of the parties is, you know, what he recommends for mediation to just avoid any unnecessary legal situations. And then down here at the bottom, you're going to put your dates. Now, in a normal market, we would put a little bit different dates. So in a normal market, we would do 7 days after acceptance. 14 days after acceptance, 21 days after acceptance, and then 30 days after acceptance. These days, we're doing it pretty tight. So today's March 30th. You know, let's say that I'm planning on this being accepted by Friday. Maybe I'll have the seller disclosure deadline be the 4th. The due diligence deadline, let's say I'm going to make that be Friday, next Friday. And then financing and appraisal deadline, typically we need 2 weeks on an appraisal. So, and that's rushed. So for me, I'm probably going to put the 15th because I'm expecting it to be accepted by the 1st. And so I'll put my finance and appraisal deadline on the 15th. But you really need to talk to your lender about this finance and appraisal deadline, figure out what's reasonable. We want them to be tight, quick days. So this is a pretty short contract because that's typically what a seller wants. So that's what we're going for. Of course, we have to also fall within our abilities and how likely our lender is to get everything done in time. And then the settlement deadline is still typically on a normal loan, you should be about 30 days out. So I might go till April 29th. As the settlement deadline, that would be a pretty standard closing date for a normal loan. So, and then you got your offer and time for acceptance. This is when your offer is going to lapse. So at this time, our offer will become no good. And the seller, if they accept it, our offer will be expired. Now that's not a big deal. So I'm going to say, okay, I want it to be accepted by Friday at 8 p.m. So if they don't accept it by Friday at 8 p.m., it's going to expire. and you are going to, it's going to expire. So then if they want to accept it, they still can, but you'll have to tie it together a little bit and kind of bring it back to life. So just know this is not a guarantee that they're going to get back to you by this time. This is just saying that if they don't accept this offer, if seller doesn't accept this offer by 8 o'clock on April 1st, this offer will lapse. Okay. So that's the Rep C. Let's just go over. So I'm going to go to next form. That's going to take me to the other addenda. So remember how I said we have 2 addenda. I'm going to do addendum number 1. I'm just going to label it that way at the top. All of this stuff will look the same. You can decide, is it an FHA loan or a VA loan, just depending on your client. This is asking, do you want the seller to make appraisal required repairs for you up to a certain dollar amount? In this market, we're doing 0 usually. In a more of a buyer's market, you could put something in there. And then this is talking about how much you want the seller to spend on pest inspections. And this is talking about how much you want them to contribute to your closing costs. So in most cases right now, we see this, but it will become a buyer's market again one day, and we'll start using these again. But really, you don't want to pre-negotiate a lot of these things with the seller, I don't think, in most markets. So anyways, and then this has the acceptance deadline. So seller shall have until you're going to make this match with the Rep C till 8 p.m. on April 1st. And 24 to 48 hours is pretty typical. Unless you know when the seller is actually going to be reviewing and accepting an offer. I'm going to go to next form. We're going to do the same thing on here. So this next form, remember, we're going to name this addendum number 2. Is this an addendum or a counter offer? It's an addendum because it's just changing the contract that we're already submitting. It's not a counter offer. We're not countering something that they're offering to us. So in here, you've got a blank space here. You can say, seller to remove all items and debris from the garage in here if you wanted. You could say anything you want. So it's a little free form. They don't really recommend us acting like attorneys and putting a bunch of extra stuff in here. But sometimes you just have to say, hey, seller agrees to, to be out no later than X date, or there's also anything that you need to put in here. So you can also use these clauses here. So let's say on this one, I'm going to say, let's say that I'm related to the client. So let's say Carrie and I are related. I'm going to go to disclosure of interest. So that's one of these available clauses here. I'm clicking and dragging it to the left and then hit load selected clauses. Now, once it loads in here, I'll just fill it out. So it says the buyer or the seller, I'm going to say the buyer, is a relative of a real estate broker or sales agent participating in the transaction. So I'll click that one. Now, if I was actually the agent, I would click this one. The buyer is a real estate broker or sales agent licensed as such who may share in the brokerage fee paid for this transaction. So anyways, you can choose whichever one. And there are these clauses. These clauses are written for us so we can use them. And there's a lot of other addenda that we can use. So take advantage of that. And then the seller, the response deadline or acceptance deadline is going to match the rest of the offer. Just like this, boom, boom, April 1st. And just like that, it's all good. So then I'm just going to hit print PDF and then generate PDF. And just like that, you can download this PDF here, and then you'll be able to upload it into DocuSign, which you'll see in another video. One thing I want to show you real quick, if you need to make a change on here, you can toggle in between the contracts. And if you do need to add or remove a form, just click right up here, add remove forms, and it will take you back here so that you can say, oh, you know what? I actually also need, what's another addendum you might need? Oh, how about limited agency? Let's say that we are working with someone else in our brokerage. We need to add limited agency. You can just add it there and it'll just update it for you. So then you could save it. And now when you go to look at your list of forms, they'll all be in here. So it's super easy to work. You could just kind of go through, do the best you can. And then of course, definitely call me, let me know, and I'm going to help you strategize. And I'm going to talk about that more in another video as well. So anyways, get it done the best you can. Fill everything out. Make sure you read the sections so you can kind of understand what needs to go in every area, and then definitely chat with me so we can make sure we get it strategized really well so that you can actually get your offer accepted, or at least have more of a likelihood of doing that. So anyways, I'll see you in the next video.